Hello and welcome to yet another edition of E Expressions for the New Indian Express. I have with me Naseeruddin Shah, over 200 films, 53 years, stage, cinema, now streaming. He still gets excited enough to do something new every year, I think. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. And of course, never minces his words and has written the finest autobiography ever, I think, in the history of Indian cinema. And then one day,
Thank you.
which he has to quickly do a sequel of because it's not the complete life so far. So I hope you use some of the lockdown time to do that. Did you, sir? Welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Kaveri. I'm fine. I did not. Write anything notable, but certainly not the sequel to my book. You see, it took me 12 years to write that first part of the book, if you can
Right.
call it the first part, because I wrote it in bits. I don't write. I can't sort of. It doesn't flow. I have to really, corrido in my mind to get things. And so I think it will take about as long to write the second part, if it ever comes out. But I'll be writing it in a different format.
Mm.
It won't be in the first person.
Oh,
It'll
okay.
probably be in the form of disconnected articles,
Right.
like disconnected short stories,
Mm.
based on things I've experienced, things I've seen, things I've heard about, to do with the film industry, because it is a rather interesting place. And there's tons of stories that can be told. So I don't know when, but sometime.
And I can already envision the performances of it on stage. So you can imagine our imaginations are already riding ahead of us. That would be wonderful, right?
Well, I've also been asked, or rather, been toying with the idea of doing an audio book of and then one day. But I've also had, sorry, I've also translated it into Hindi.
Hmm.
It's been published in Devanagari and in Urdu, the same version.
Hmm.
It is currently being translated into Bengali.
Hmm.
It's been published in Marathi as well.
Wow.
So I don't know whether to do an audio book. Probably will do it in the Hindustani version, not the English version.
You just have to
Okay.
edit some of the portions if it's for all ages.
Yeah, well, possibly.
But have you been reading a lot? Have you been? I believe you've been reading a lot during this time, and
I've been reading a lot. I decided to. I've always been curious about the Shakespeare plays which no one reads.
hmm,
Everyone knows Julius Caesar. Everybody knows Hamlet,
hmm,
Macbeth, Othello, As You Like It, Twelfth Night. Possibly that's a pretty long list for an average person who has not studied literature. I happened to read them all. Some when I was in school, some when I was in college. And after that, I did not really read any Shakespeare until this lockdown. And I decided to read those which I know nothing about.
hmm.
And there are so many.
Yeah,
There's a thing called King John. There's a thing called The Life of Henry VIII. And I didn't even know he'd written a play called Henry VIII. He has.
amazing.
Yeah, I read the Henrys in school. Fifth we read in school.
Right.
I plowed through parts 1 and 2 of 4.
Hmm.
Part 3, 3 parts of Henry VI I haven't attempted.
Hmm.
But I read the others. I found the play Coriolanus particularly fascinating.
Yeah.
And some of those comedies, whew, you wonder why they are called comedies, you know.
Yeah.
Why is Merchant of Venice called a comedy, for example?
I can't
Yeah,
understand
I've
that.
never understood.
It,
Maybe because it doesn't have anybody's eyes getting gouged out, or
yeah.
anybody getting stabbed to death or eaten by horses or something like that. You know, that's why it's
Yeah.
a comedy. So that's what I've been doing. That took a while, but it was great fun, and I felt very stimulated. And the funny thing is, a lot of the time when I read a book, a week later can't recall a lot of it.
Hmm.
Same thing happens with films that I see these days. I think this has been happening to me over the last 10 years. But I can recall the plots of each one of these,
Wow.
Measure for Measure, or Love's Labour's Lost, or, things like Timon of Athens,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I'm thoroughly educated in Shakespeare, educated myself in it, and I was practicing Urdu,
Yeah.
reading and writing Urdu, which I've been also wanting to do.
Right.
It felt very stimulating. I've been taking singing classes.
For Bandish Bandits.
Well, for Bandish Bandits, it was a different kind of learning that I had to do to try and understand classical music, because I must confess I've not been a great fan of Indian vocal classical.
Right.
I don't understand it, and that's why I think I'm not a fan. Never understood its purpose. I never understood what they're trying to achieve. I had a conversation with Pandit Ajay Chakravarti, who sang for me, and that conversation made things a bit clear. And then I was training with a young man who was Pandit Jasraj's pupil,
Right.
Akshat, who explained, who would sort of, deconstruct it for me, and say, this is where, it's not just a voice going up and down. He said, you got to listen, there are notes being sung. With each one of there's a different note.
Right.
So identify those, and you'll be able to identify what's being sung. So he made me practice the notes, singing the notes, not the akar.
Right.
So a little bit, I would say I've reached up to A as far as understanding classical music goes. But it was great fun practicing it. It was great fun.
I spoke to the two leads of Bandish Bandits, the young leads, and they were saying that they were so overawed by you that whenever you would come on set, they would just stand to attention, and you would tell them, just, I mean, get normal. And they said they had not found a better teacher than you ever, But that's true of so many people I talk to, whether it's Randeep Huda or all the people who've been associated over the years with Motley. I think your true calling could perhaps be as a teacher.
Yeah, but had I decided to become a teacher earlier,
I wonder the generation you would have raised.
I wonder what generation I would have raised. And I also wonder what I would have learned. As it happens, the maximum amount of learning for me happens when I'm conducting a class.
Right.
And calling it teaching, I find rather pompous. I'd like to call it helping actors, working with younger actors, and that is what I love. It's great to just see them hitting their potential every now and then. It's great. It's more of a kick to have them achieve it than to do it yourself. I have been teaching off and on for almost 30 years now at the drama school, at the Film Institute, at Whistling Woods, etc., here and there. I did it because when I did it out of choice, not out of majboori.
Right.
And I think it's the people who become teachers because they have nothing else to do, that they can do nothing else, are the ones who stay stuck, and they're the ones who make these, who are the problem teachers, I think.
Yeah. And what struck me again is, both with Me Raksam and with Bandish Bandits, you play these very imperious characters, and in a way, both spectrums, in a way, hardline right-wing, perhaps we could say, and hardline Islamic. It's so interesting for you to play these characters and you being so different from it. What was the experience of playing these two characters? It must have been exhausting.
It's not. Acting is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, Shaban asked me the same question during a conversation on Me Raksam.
Yeah.
She said, what is common between you and this guy you're playing?
Yeah.
So what I asked her in turn, what is common between her and the madam she played in Mandi? What is common between her and the kind of innocent she played in Ankur?
Right.
What is the common between her and the betrayed wife she played in Arth, and the way she pleads with him? I mean, that was all make-believe.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with digging out your inner feelings,
Yeah. That's
so
true.
you assume a skin and try and make it your own. You're supposed to, I have tried to give that same conviction to anything I have played, and I haven't always succeeded, because succeeding or failing at that depends on the quality of the writing.
Hmm.
And one doesn't always come across constantly good writing in
And yeah, and then one comes across movies that last a lifetime. I mean, even now, that last scene of Janevi Do Yaro, where both you and Ravi Baswani making that gesture, for me, that is the citizen of India today. You know,
Yes,
that's how we are today. It's such
absolutely.
a comment on where we are as a society. I wanted to ask you, because as an artist, you obviously engage with society, reflect on what's going on. When you look around you, and obviously the film industry is a slice of that society, how do you see the changes? The past few years have been quite extraordinary in the changes that have come about, and not necessarily for the good.
Yeah. In the film industry, firstly, since the 70s, and I've always held this, we've had a massive deterioration in quality.
Yeah.
Um, and one of those reasons was the coming of color. The second major reason was the promotion of some pretty mediocre talent. And the third reason was the legitimization of plagiarism,
Yes.
which really took wing in the 70s and hasn't recovered from that. We still do it, even though YouTube is there and Google is there and they can find out and this and that, but we still do it a lot of the time. So that's an ailment that we have been stricken by for ages and which we can't seem to come out of. Well, with that state of affairs, billions of people watch and love Hindi movies. So,
Yeah.
so one can't necessarily look at that as a negative. The fact that I don't personally enjoy them. But what has been happening of late is a little more worrisome than that, and particularly this shitstorm that has erupted after the death of this young actor, where it's almost as if everybody's descended to the lowest possible level in terms of complaints, in terms of backbiting, in terms of running down the other, and it's reaching alarming proportions. It is reaching communal proportions after a point, and there really does seem to be another agenda operating here, which which will, I suppose, will come to light soon. But the level of piffle, the level of insignificant discussion, and the film industry has always been a massive one for anecdotes and gossip.
Yeah.
But that whole anecdotage has gone to another senile level, it seems, where anyone who has the slightest axe to grind about the industry is coming out with a complaint. I was deprived of this film. This, that, so and so. These things happen in any profession. But yet this whole thing, instead of subsiding, seems to be coming to such a head that I don't know where the explosion will come in. And it is the result, I would say, of a gradually deteriorating mentality in our industry, even though there are probably more educated people in the film industry today than there were earlier.
Exactly.
In all professions.
Yeah.
The actors come in, a lot of them come in educated. All the technicians are highly educated, they're highly trained and very efficient as well. Despite that, this kind of tendency is creeping in, and I suppose it is being patronized from somewhere.
Yeah.
But it does seem to be a movement that seems to be driving a wedge again between people in the industry. The industry has always prided itself on being a big family and so on. It remains to be seen whether that is really true. And I would think it's the lack of originality, the lack of any real regard for the other is finally coming home to roost. Aisa lag raha hai.
And I think it's, you said it's not very clear where, what the agenda is, but the agenda is quite clear. It is to divide people along communal lines. And I think so far money was, commerce had sort of papered over these cracks, and you had,
Yes.
you always were told, oh, but we have the three khans, how can you have an
Yeah.
industry that's communal? We have, but now I think, money is beginning to sort of also give way to the real ugliness inside. And I think
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
really scary.
Yes. So far, money was the only god
Yes,
that the film industry worshipped.
yes,
Now it's including others.
yeah, yeah. Some are beloved leaders and our dear leaders.
Our dear leaders, and yeah, and this sowing of hatred
Yes,
is for those who are doing it. And the amazing thing is, those who are doing it are blaming it on everyone else. It's quite astounding, to read the statement of this fellow Kapil Mishra, who goes to launch the Bloomsbury book.
exactly.
The kind of things said over there, it's quite amazing. The dividing of society, creating distinctions, freedom of speech, all every narrative is allowed in Modi's government, etc., etc. Everything that they're doing is being blamed on the opposite camp.
Yeah,
The intolerance is being blamed on them. The biases are being blamed on them. The violence is being blamed on them. It's a very convenient argument. This whataboutery. It's getting beyond all sane limits.
and I think it's quite extraordinary that you have this victimization, this self-victimization of people who are so successful. I mean, whether,
Exactly. That's what I don't understand. What do a lot of these actors who've been complaining of being cheated of a film here or there, complaining about? They've had a comfortable life. They've earned money. If
yeah,
their names didn't appear on the post, I mean, that is a big thing to complain about. In so and so film, I wasn't on the posters. Is this a thing you crib about? Is this a thing you nurse in your heart for years and come out with it at this time? Or to say that I was denied an award by so and so, this camp is at work and that camp. Of course, there are camps in the film industry. Where are there not camps?
mhm.
But to blame all the ills of the film industry onto this nepotism, and I mean, it's become an absurd word in itself now.
Absolutely. The other agenda is also to silence people, isn't it? Because the more you troll them, the more you scare them, the more you let a mob after them, even if it's virtual,
Yeah.
you tend to get silenced. And that's what they've done to so many people. They've just silenced them forever.
Yes, and that is the lesson that's being handed out to us with the Prashant Bhushan case.
Exactly.
Don't you dare speak.
Yeah.
And if a man like him can be taken to task for expressing what he feels was the truth, then it's really something to worry about.
Yeah.
The fact that so many actors for no reason are being blasted in the social media. A girl like Swara, who's very outspoken, apparently gets threats and gets abuses and so on all the time. And this is only just to shut her up. And the fact is, I get these messages too, but I pay no heed to them. I don't get as many as I imagine someone like Swara gets. But it does give you a certain, I mean, it does make your heart thump a little faster when you read you SOB, I'll do this and that to you on your timeline.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you feel good.
Right.
And you wonder, okay, hey, should I be saying these things or not? And that is their intention. For example, the way the statement I made about a police officer's life being less important than the life of a cow got twisted into all sorts of statements. I am afraid. I said I'm concerned about my children, is what I said. I never used the word afraid, but yet they go on saying, I still keep getting messages saying, you are afraid, why don't you go to Pakistan?
Pakistan.
Yeah, now it's go to Turkey.
I mean, at least, yeah, I suppose Turkey is an improvement on Pakistan, but I mean, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But, I wanted to remind you, remember what they did to Om Puri, your friend? That ghastly interview that happened where he had said something so innocent about BSF and about Nitin Pandya, and they just made his life a misery.
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
terrible, terrible thing. We don't acknowledge these things, but it was literally, forcing a man onto his knees.
Yes.
A very proud man.
And all these incidents should teach every film actor that to believe that the audience loves you is a
Yes,
bloody myth. And
absolutely.
if you're naive enough to believe in it, go ahead. But you're going to learn sooner or later. They don't love us. And I'm not talking of myself. I'm talking of the guys who outside whose houses these mobs go ape and dance and sing and cheer and whistle. They're there for the thrill. They're not there. They don't give a damn if you were living or dying.
Absolutely.
Um, and it just proves. And this is the way their resentment comes out. Some guy with 25 followers threatens to teach Amir Khan a lesson.
Yeah.
Now, this guy has probably been a huge Amir Khan fan all his life. He's probably spent his pocket money on Amir Khan's movies. Yet he wants to teach Amir Khan a lesson.
Yeah.
Look at the kind of abuse the Bachchans are getting.
Yes.
For no reason at all.
Yeah.
For falling ill, for God's sake. But yet this has happened to a man like him.
Yeah.
Who's been worshipped, whose work rather has been worshipped for 4 generations of people.
And who's always tried to be correct
Who's always tried to be correct, who's the epitome of a gentleman.
to the point of sometimes being very, very too correct.
Yeah, yes, he is. But at the same time, the point I'm trying to make is that not at all should any of us film actors, no matter how much affection we receive, believe that we are universally loved. We are not.
It's a terrible truth to face, but it's also affecting the storytelling, isn't it? It's becoming more it's becoming more about previous movies, previous storylines. It's not even just about plagiarism from the West anymore. It's also happily plagiarizing from their own previous movies.
Yeah, and distorting history, distorting facts, giving us a new narrative altogether. That's what's supposedly undoing the harm that's been done to young minds over the last 75 years. I think the last 75 years, may say, leaving aside the last 25, I think we produced absolutely wonderful stuff when we had we had literary giants in the film industry, when we had visionary filmmakers like Bimal Roy and Gurudutt and Mehboob Khan and K. Asif. There was a time we had writers of the stature of Jan Nisar Akhtar and Kaifi Azmi Sahab and Ali Sada Jafri and Rajinder Singh Bedi and literatures like Ismat Chugtai and Manto writing for the movies. Now we have hacks writing for us. And it had become common, in fact, to receive a video cassette of a Hollywood movie, and be told, "Hum ye bana rahe hain ji." And even now, though that doesn't happen anymore, when it comes to a question of designing costumes or designing the poster, we are shown designs of 100 Hollywood movies and say, "Kuch poster aisa banayenge, isme se ye lenge, isme se wo lenge, isme se."
Outsourcing plagiarism.
Outsourcing, totally. Yeah, totally.
But, even this culture of biopics and so-called women-oriented films, they come with a certain agenda, certain price tag.
Sure. Look at I got dragged over the coals for criticizing the Milkha Singh biopic. It didn't occur to anyone that young Farhan, though he was looking absolutely wonderful, but he was not anything like Milkha Singh. And old Milkha Singh himself says, "Wah ji wah, bahut acha hai, ye main bilkul aisa hi tha." I mean, has the man forgotten? His photographs of the 1960 Olympics still exist and you can see them.
Yeah.
So, well, I have nothing against glorifying a person who deserves to be. A person like Milkha was the pride of the country. I have no problem with you make Milkha into a hero, but then at what price? Where you're bashing the neighbor country.
Yeah.
Or if we make a war movie, it's all jingoism. Not a single movie has been made in our country which shows war in its true colors, in its true essence, and talks about the horrors of war and the fact that there are no victors in a war. Every time we venture into whether it is the Gunjan Saxena or whether it is the whatever we've made in terms of war movies, they are all jingoistic exercises. in which the bad guys are shown like, cartoon villains, and we are the all-conquering heroes. I don't know if if it's even any point wishing that this would change, because it doesn't look like it.
Mhm. Do you think streaming series are offering hope?
It could be, as I said in an earlier interview too, that it'll be interesting to see how an audience which is used to cheering and clapping and whistling
Mhm.
responds to a movie in their own home. Will a middle-class family be willing to watch a blood-drenched revenge drama over their dining table along with their children? And will they indulge in the same vicarious thrill that they get when they're infected by 1,000 others who are similarly screaming and shouting? It remains to be seen. I have my doubts. And so that is why I'm a bit optimistic that maybe the huge budgeted monster might just take a back seat for a while,
Right.
hopefully forever. But
Yeah.
that's hoping for too much, because really the film industry operates on generating money, and I'm pretty certain they'll go back to worshipping their favorite god soon.
Gods, we don't know. Not enough goddesses for sure. But
Yeah.
just looking back at your own career, some of the most amazing performances have been the most unexpected and the most fun. Say Achadev or Dirty Picture or Ishkia for that matter, which is truly gorgeous.
Hmm.
These films have sort of given you a completely different life, a completely different career from the very earnest beginnings that you had, I think, in Sham Benegal. You were
Yeah.
a very angry young man those days, I think. So when you look at these movies, do you look back with affection, the accidents, or
Yeah, I look back on the entire past with great affection and pride.
right?
If I had my life to live over again, I'd live it the same way. I think I wouldn't change a thing. I've made mistakes. I've fallen short. I have not been able to deliver at times. That's part of the game. I mean, Sunil Gavaskar didn't score a century every time he went out to bat. Uh, mm, he also dropped catches.
And he scored that awful 36, which no one will ever forgive him
We'll
for.
never forget in 60 over 36 not out.
No one will forgive him for that. But
So,
what a great character he was, you know. I mean, when you talk about Virat Kohli the way you do, I can understand that. But people have no sense of history. They don't know where we're coming from, you know.
exactly, yeah.
Don't you feel you're talking in a hollow world?
Yeah, well, I had no clue that what I said about Virat Kohli would have such a backlash. I just felt like saying it because I was infuriated watching some of his antics in a test match in Australia. But what people didn't understand is that I actually should have worded it differently, but I was too agitated to make my point. But what I was referring to was the kind of dignity that Dhoni just before him,
Yeah.
or Ashwin just before him, not Ashwin, Kumble,
Kumble.
or Dravid, or Tendulkar. This is the kind of dignity that these people carried. He said, I wish that apart from batting tips, he'd learnt a few lessons in dignity from these people.
Yeah.
You never saw Sachin mouthing off at any opposition player.
Right.
You never saw Dhoni abusing on. And here you see this man spouting obscenities all the time, and then to the point where you see our girls doing it.
Yeah.
You know, when they were playing the World Cup. And what impact do you think it's going to have on the younger set, where people just like anybody young filmmaker will say, "Haan, but wo to hit film we to copied thi na." It's that kind of a thing. Virat Kohli does it, so what's wrong if I do it?
Right.
That is what I was getting at.
Yeah.
I was not personally attacking Virat. I do not know him. I've never met him. I think he's a fantastic cricketer. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So one really does miss, the giants.
You know, the civility in public discourse, the civility in public conduct.
Yeah.
You know, aggression is now so revered
Yes.
that we've forgotten that, you should actually have a little humility.
A little humility. And the IPL, I think, has a lot to do with it, because all the cricketers have suddenly started performing for the camera.
Right.
All of them are
That's
performing for the camera. The game, I don't know how important that is. They all throw themselves about like like demons, but it's yeah, frivolity seems to have taken over.
hmm. And how do you see the conduct of our leaders in the industry?
Who are the leaders of the industry is what I'd like to know. Are
Well,
they
they're close.
are they the richest guys who have the biggest production houses?
Yeah.
They don't bother to set themselves up as leaders or to set an example of any kind, or or to initiate youngsters into the craft of filmmaking, or to pass on the benefit of their experience or anything. I don't know if you could call them leaders. I don't think the film industry has a leader. One person who the entire film industry can look up to. I don't think there is any such person around anymore. There are plenty of people waving their flags of opinions all over the place, but I don't think you could call them leaders. And I think a lot of these people, their opinions are going to be short-lived.
Hmm. Uh, have you seen a lot of, have you lost a lot of friends over the past few years because of some of the comments you've made?
No, no, I haven't. Well, I don't have hordes of friends anyway. I have a few friends who are very dear to me and who've been friends, most of them before I became famous. They've stayed friends through the dark times and through till today. So no, I wouldn't say that. And whoever who's unfriended me on Facebook, I give a damn about that.
You must be quite happy to have one
Yeah.
less follower. Please go, please go. But what excites you, Mr. Shah, about movies now? These are dark times, but every movie is an act of hope, isn't it? Every performance is an act of hope.
What's exciting me is the kind of work a lot of youngsters have done during the lockdown.
Mm.
Since they've been pushed against the wall, they've had to access their deepest resources and come up with ideas which really matter to them. They are lucky not to have the pressure of a distributor or a producer saying, ye kar do, wo kar do, gana dal do, etc., etc. And they are permitted, and also the censors are not sitting on their heads, chopping every second line and having smoking is bad for you and this is bad for you and that. I mean, we should make a movie where everything is bad for you, where if you tease a girl, a notice should appear. Eve teasing can land you in jail. Raping a woman can get you into really serious trouble. Smuggling goods can land you, etc., etc. You have a warning for everything. When politicians appear, it should be don't listen to this man.
I'd love to see that for sure.
Yeah, but sorry, what were we saying?
So some of the work that some of the young people are doing.
Yeah, some of the online plays that have been performed, several films made in the lockdown, of which my son was a part of one of them, called Lust Stories, which were
Right.
home stories, so not lust stories, which are very good. All four of those, and many other of these short 10-minute films which several youngsters are making.
Yeah.
And it's also very interesting that most of the work being done online in the lockdown is being done by young people.
Yes.
And that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Some very original stuff. I hope this effect lasts. I think for a film like Mir Aqsam, the lockdown has been very fortunate. Otherwise, Mir Aqsam would have had to spend more on publicity than they spent on making the film.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it had no, padakte hue gaane or exciting visual gunfights or anything to draw the audience. Not even a young handsome face. They had two old men as the center. Who would have come for it? Very few people might have been interested. It may have caught on because of its virtues by word of mouth, perhaps. But this has been fortunate that, as Shabana was saying, that in like 17, 18 countries at the same time it's been seen.
Yes.
How would we have managed that if we were to have a theatrical release? It wouldn't have been possible. So the fact that it's benefited a thing like Mir Aqsam, the fact that Bandish Bandits, which no one expected would be so entertaining, has proved to be refreshing, as everybody calls it, free of the obscenity-filled tirades of most of the web series and the gratuitous sex and even nudity in places. This is completely, and it's very refreshing, and people are appreciating this. Whereas there was a time when people would go to see a movie just if they heard there was a nude scene in it,
Yes.
Yeah. I remember a Russian film called The Gypsy Camp Vanishes into the Blue.
Oh, yes, of
Which
course.
was shown when around early 70s, right?
In
And
every morning show, it had
yeah,
the longest life.
yes, because at the very end there was a shot of a naked girl.
Yes.
People would sit through that entire movie, which they wouldn't understand, just to see that shot of a naked girl. Well, things have changed from there, but the desire to see nudity or to see something that will be a turn on is still very great, and movies still manage to supply it. It's a great relief that something like Bandish Bandits has been an antidote.
I hope it will persuade you to do more streaming series.
I think that's the future, Kaveri.
Yes.
I really think I have no aversion to it. I never did. Like I had no aversion to appearing on television. It's
Yeah,
just
you did Mirza Ghalib.
I did Mirza Ghalib, which is
Played
one of the
Shivaji.
milestones in my career. I did the
Mhm.
discovery of India and also a few other things. I did a thing for Chetan Saab called Paramveer Chakra. So
Yes.
I had no reservations. I never believed that if you do TV, you won't get work in movies. I was already working in movies.
Right.
TV was another medium, another avenue, and I don't alter my method of work if I'm on stage or if I'm in front of a movie camera or a TV camera or sitting doing a Zoom performance like we did of our play Waiting for Godot.
Yes.
What an actor has to do is the same, whether you've got tons of makeup on or whether you're talking to a blank screen and you're not even seeing your audience. What you have to do is get across. And performing online, it's very interesting that it has really made me realize the worth of not concentrating on the audience.
Mhm.
On stage, the audience is an integral factor.
Yeah.
A play does catch life with the presence of an audience.
Right.
When a play is performed before an audience, it improves by leaps and bounds. Here, there's no audience, but yet you can't afford to dwell on that. There's no laughter coming in, there's no appreciation, there's no applause. So it just teaches you concentrate on what you have to do, because that's what you should be doing on stage. Even if they're laughing and going mad, that should not affect you.
Yeah. But it's actually quite difficult because that really means you have to just understand the word and just focus on the text and nothing else.
Absolutely. And that is the direction toward which the kind of theater I do has been gravitating over the last few decades.
Right. And even now, the words of Manto or Ismat Chugtai or Fairs, I mean, how contemporary they seem. I know contemporary is a bad word, but how it looks as if it was written for today.
Absolutely. It's amazing. It's a proven fact that a piece of writing that stands the test of time is qualified to be called great. And in fact, just yesterday, Ratna and Hiba, my daughter, and I read 3 of Ismat's stories. One of them is a story called Jade, Roots. It could be a description of the COVID situation. It could be a description of the CAA, the NRC thing. It's talking about partition. And it's talking about, emptying the town of the minority, and the fact that to identify, it's so spookily prescient.
God.
She wrote this in 1948 or something.
Jade.
Jade.
Okay. Let's read this.
Yeah. It's one of the stories from which Garam Hawa is based.
Okay.
About the old woman who refuses to leave.
Okay.
And I mean, it made my hair stand on end when I was reading it. And we did it, and I think it's extremely effective. So Manto is more visceral than Ismat is, but equally sharp in his observations and as prescient.
Is there anything that they wrote, any line or two, which so aptly describes for you what's happening in India today?
There are many. in fact, in the story I did yesterday, there is this passage where राजस्थान में लिखी गई थी कहानी. She spent a lot of time in Jodhpur, Ismailabad, कि अक़लियतों को बाहर निकालने का जब फैसला खुलेआम होने लगा, like it's happening today.
Yeah.
And as Kunal Kamra said, that the kind of things you heard after 6 drinks, you now hear after a coffee, a morning coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, खुलेआम होने लगा. तो मारवाड़ के मुसलमान इतने मुसलमान और हिंदू एक दूसरे से इतने मिले जुले थे कि उन्हें भेष या जबान या उनके हुलिये से पहचानना मुश्किल होता था. And there was a time, I have seen it, where the Maharashtrian Muslim was unidentifiable from the Hindu Muslim, the Hindu Maharashtrian. The Gujarati Muslim was not identifiable from a Gujarati Hindu. The Malayali Muslim was not identifiable from a Malayali Hindu or a Malayali Christian. They wore the same clothes, they spoke the same language, they ate the same food. They worshipped different gods.
Kashmiri Muslims and Kashmiri Hindus.
Yeah, exactly. You could not tell the difference.
No, you couldn't.
Yeah. So this line hit me particularly hard. And the next one after this, कि मारवाड़ में ऐसा था, लेकिन मारवाड़ से बाहर के जो लोग थे वो डर के भाग गए थे. पर मारवाड़ में सबने राजा जी से कहा कि हुजूर मुसलमानों को चुन चुन के निकालना बड़ा मुश्किल काम है, क्योंकि वो इतने घुल मिल गए हैं. उसके लिए एक कमेटी बनानी पड़ेगी जिसमें जायद फिजूल खर्चा होगा. I was reminded of the crores that was spent for that futile NRC in Assam. You know,
amazing, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, how could they have known what's going to happen in this?
No, I don't think they were not clairvoyant. They wrote honestly about what they saw happening around them.
Around it, yeah.
It is our tragedy that we still live in such a world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's our tragedy that we have to, read Fairz's words and find that they still have meaning.
That they still have meaning, and you wonder at his, instead of celebrating, as he himself says in the morning, Freedom's Dawn, that celebrating is allowed, but mourning is not allowed.
Right.
Whereas he was mourning for the losses that he saw. Yeah, that's how it is.
But I hope that your work remains something that gives you the desire to get up in the morning every day and start afresh and do something new and find some exciting word or find an old text which gives you a new meaning.
Yes, I feel very fortunate
Yeah.
that I'm in the profession I am. I thank my stars every day that I have been able to live this kind of life, the life I always wanted to live. There's too many people in the world who are miserable with the work they do. I feel very blessed, and I think all actors should feel that way, and also at the same time feel a sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
So as you said, and as the example of the great Zohra Sehgal,
Yes.
who till the day she died would go up on her terrace and practice speeches that she delivered 50 years ago. There's always, luckily, there's so much more now that one can access through the internet and stuff. Zohra, back on whatever she knew. But I can access anything. I can access Oscar Wilde, I can access Shaw, I can access Fairs, O. Henry, anybody I like. And I can just, do a speech to myself and gain as much pleasure out of it as if I were performing it to others. And if I find a piece hits me particularly hard, then I try and spread it as far as I can through my work. And my work offers me this opportunity. It offers me the opportunity not only to state political beliefs, it offers me the opportunity to explore myself. It offers me the opportunity to understand the world. It offers me the opportunity to understand other people. I feel very, very lucky.
Yeah, and I think also to discover new things, discover new people, discover new talent. It must be exciting to see fresh faces.
Oh yes.
Young people.
Yes. And it is so, I'm totally bowled over by the quality of actors of this younger generation. I think most of them are absolutely fantastic, and we have some totally outstanding actors, both male and female, among the youngsters. As I said, they have been exposed to more than us,
Yeah.
but also they have a sense of discipline, which actors of my generation lacked by and large. Actors of the generation before me lacked it totally.
Totally.
Yeah.
Lals and yeah, they lived a great life.
Yeah, and they never thought these days would end, you know. That's why you hear these tragic stories of people who lived in Pali Hill ending up in chawls,
Exactly.
you know. So, you know, things, these youngsters have realized the worth of what they've stumbled onto. All of them don't attribute their success to godly beneficence, you know. They know they've worked for it. There's so many of these kids who've come from nowhere, made it really big entirely on their own steam. And that is something that's quite fantastic. And it's happening more and more. And having become successful, have been able to retain the qualities which made them successful, which means they understood what it was. Unlike the actors of a previous generation who, when they failed, had no clue why this had happened to them.
Right.
You know, yeah. And that bewildered look in the eyes of a has-been star is one of the saddest things. Yeah.
Yeah.
But these kids of the generation after mine, disciplined, hardworking, well-informed, cinema savvy, and exposed to so much. They had to be better than us, and so many of them are.
Just as the last question, I know you must have been asked this several times, but just a couple of your performances which delight you. I can name at least 5, which goes on from, say, Jaane Bhi Do Yaro to Masoom. But just a couple which delight you even now, and you wonder, how did you, Ishqiya, for instance, how did you do that? Do you sometimes see yourself accidentally or otherwise and say, how did I do that?
Ishqiya, in fact, is probably the only time in my career I've been asked to play a character in love. I have done it earlier in some terrible movies like Sunaina and all, but I felt, you know, and another few others, but they were rejected outright. And I wondered, hey, why is the audience not interested in seeing a guy like me in love? No, the fact was those were poorly written. Both the Ishqiyas, it's not very hard to fall in love with adorable girls like Vidya and Madhuri Dixit.
Madhuri, of course.
It is not difficult at all to believe that you're in love with them.
Yes.
And I thoroughly enjoyed that. They're both absolute sweethearts, total pros, very good at their job, and delightful people to be with. So, as I said, it was not difficult at all. What I did find difficult was Abhishek wanted me to sing the song myself, the song that Madhuri hears me singing.
Yes.
And that's where I started doing singing classes, but I failed so miserably that he decided not to keep that voice. But playing romantic, no, there's nothing that I look back on and marvel at how did I do this. No, I sometimes wonder at my own fearlessness for trying to swim the Ganges in Par when I did not know how to swim properly.
Yeah.
Bravado got the better of me, and when things got too dangerous, they did get a double.
Right.
But when I see Par, I feel particularly proud because that character is as far away from me as any other that I have done, and I look physically in the best shape of my life. But I don't marvel how did I do it. I know how I did it. I worked like a dog. I dieted. I went on a strict diet for about 3 months. I went on a very rigorous workout diet because I wanted to have a physique like the kind of physiques you see of the people who dig roads.
Yeah.
You know, their bodies look like a kind of diagram you saw in biology class. You know, where all just their muscles are defined. So that is how I did it. When I look back at Ghalib, I know that I could not have done it without Gulzar Bhai's help, without his educating me on Urdu poetry. So in each of the cases of the performances I'm proud of, whether it's Sparsh or Par or Ghalib, or Nishant, my first film, I know exactly how I did it. And the ones I failed in, I also know why I failed in them. And but I don't spend too much time admiring my own work, you know. And I hope I hope a
I
time
don't.
doesn't I hope a time doesn't come when I'm sitting all alone and watching my old movies.
You don't seem the kind who will, and I don't think the industry, no matter how communal it gets, will ever come to the point where they won't have work for you. So thank you very much, Mr. Shah. It's always such a pleasure, and all the best. And may you do much more work across every platform possible, short films, series, stage, whatever. Thank you so much.
Bless you, Kaveri. Thanks very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.